Edge of Fate has pretty much changed everything we know about our builds, from new stat bonuses, new tiers of armor, a second round of consecration nerfs, and dozens of other changes that will likely reshape the meta over the next several months. As I was going through the Legend campaign and scaling into the Mythic World tier, I tested all kinds of melee-based Titan builds to determine which will be the new king. From Bonk Hammer to Banner of War, Consecration, and a brand new build I've cooked up for this video, we'll be comparing all of them side by side and showcase a nasty new Titan build that is absolutely destroying endgame PvE right now. I'm Above, and if you enjoyed today's video, a like and subscription is always greatly appreciated. Now let's get into it. To kick things off, let's head into the firing range and compare some of the most popular Titan melee builds head to head. All of these builds were tested with roughly a 180 melee stat, give or take a few points here or there. First up, we have Consecration with an Inmost Syntho class item. This one is a bit more tricky to test as it has several different iterations of damage that take place, but I'll try to keep it simple. The initial wave deals 121 damage, with Scorch ticking for an additional 12 damage per second. The impact damage deals 2,317 damage with Knockout active, with the Ignition dealing a flat 676 damage as it no longer scales with melee damage bonuses. This brings us to 3,138 total damage per charged melee when you factor in both Syntheseps and Knockout into the equation. Next, we have Banner of War, once again being paired with Syntheseps. This one is a much more straightforward test, with the base melee hitting for 2,340 damage with Syntheseps and Banner of War active. This is slightly less than Consecration overall, but it's worth keeping in mind that Banner of War also provides constant healing and support to nearby allies, making it much better in team play. Next, we have Solar Titan, which used to be the ultimate solo class, but unfortunately right now, guys, this just isn't even worth testing because the hammer cooldown changes are so bad that Bonk Hammer is basically unplayable at the moment. If you throw it at your feet, the internal timer prevents you from actually picking up the hammer right away, which means you're constantly chasing your hammer around the map. This leaves us with our final test, which is Thunderclap with Knockout. For some reason in Edge of Fate, Knockout is scaling significantly better than any other melee buff, coming in at 4,482 total damage when fully charged with Knockout active, exceeding every other melee build we've tested so far. And the crazy part is that it doesn't rely on a damage boosting exotic to get there. Now, for the skeptics who will say that you'll never really fully charge your Thunderclap in open combat, that may have been true before Edge of Fate, but with how much damage this ability is doing right now, there are definitely use cases where you'll encounter a tankier target and use the fully charged Thunderclap to secure a kill. And on top of this, the quickfire version of this ability still deals a significant 2,264 damage, which is nearly identical to Banner of War with Syntheseps anyway. So now that I have your attention, let's dive into today's build. Most of you probably think we'll be rocking Arc because of Thunderclap, but we're actually going to incorporate the Prismatic kit to make these abilities even stronger. At the core of our build is Thunderclap, Knockout, and an insurmountable Skull Fort. This exotic has definitely seen some use in recent seasons, but it has never been stronger than it is right now. This exotic refunds your charged melee ability and starts health regen every time we secure a charged melee kill, which means we can infinitely spam this ability now that its damage is so reliable. We'll be pairing this with Berserker as our super of choice to take advantage of Facet of Purpose, which in my opinion is the strongest fragment in the game right now. Simply by using this super, Facet of Purpose will grant us Woven Mail every time we pick up an Orb of Power, which is an additional 40% damage resist for free. If you want to survive higher world tiers more easily, this is your golden ticket. And spoiler, we're going to pair this with Heavy Handed on the gauntlets to produce Orbs of Power when securing charged melee kills, which means we'll basically have this active at all times. With Thunderclap building our Light Transcendent bar, we're going to use the Glacier Grenade to rapidly build our Darkness bar. This is arguably the most efficient way to build darkness energy in the entire game, as the shatter damage in a small group of enemies will basically fill the entire meter instantly. Next, we have our aspects, and Knockout is the first obvious pick here. This ability increases melee range and damage after securing a melee kill, while simultaneously restoring a portion of your health and making you amplified, giving you more range, more damage, survivability, and amplified to provide you with not only a speed boost, but lower enemy accuracy all in one. This is such an insane skill, and arguably the most underrated part is that if you miss your charge melee or temporarily break your core gameplay loop, all you have to do is deal basic arc melee damage a few times, and you'll literally get your full melee recharged in a matter of seconds. Not to mention the fact that Knockout health regen procs on non-charge melee kills as well. Our second aspect is much more underrated, but synergizes perfectly with this build. Diamond Lance states that defeating targets with shatter damage or abilities, aka our charged melee, will spawn a stasis lance that can be thrown to freeze nearby enemies. So you'll thunderclap a group of adds, generate a diamond lance, and throw it at the next group of enemies to CC them while you close the gap. And you can infinitely rinse and repeat this process that is especially powerful as you progress into higher world tiers. Moving on to our fragments, first up we have Facet of Purpose, as I mentioned earlier, to give us Woven Mail on orb pickup. Next we have Facet of Protection, which is a free stackable 20% damage resist on top of Woven Mail when surrounded by enemy combatants. This is an obvious choice as you'll be at a significant power delta in higher world tiers and will always be surrounded by enemies with our core gameplay loop to take advantage of this. Next, we have Facet of Dawn, which grants us Radiant each time we use our charged melee ability, giving us 20% bonus damage and intrinsic anti-barrier capabilities at all times. Next, and maybe one of my favorite parts of the build, is Facet of Courage, which increases our melee damage by a massive 50% against frozen targets, thanks to both the Diamond Lance and Glacier Grenade in our kit. And last but not least, we have Facet of Ruin, which states that shattering enemies or destroying stasis crystals will deal more damage. So we're not only dealing more damage to frozen targets, but when we shatter them, surrounding enemies will take increased damage as well. Now, to make this build even stronger, I'm going to recommend two weapon options. The first and best in slot is Bastion, an extremely powerful exotic that buffs melee damage by an astounding 300% when landing most of your pellets in a burst, and dealing melee damage will increase Bastion's damage by 45%. So you can quickly start to see how this fits into our build as a boss melter, allowing you to chain both buffs together back to back with no cooldown. But if you're not a fan of this exotic, 1-2 punch shotguns are also fantastic for this build. As for armor mods, on the helmet I went with Special Finder for more consistent Bastion or 1-2 punch shotgun drops, and a kinetic siphon to counteract Heavy Handed's 10-second orb generating cooldown. This will help you keep Woven Mail up more consistently and help take advantage of powerful friends to grant armor charges to your allies even more often. Our super isn't really all that important to us, which is why I didn't go for something like hands-on to get our super faster. Berserker is basically a Woven Mail bot if we're being completely honest anyway. On the gauntlets, I recommend running heavy-handed to generate orbs for Woven Mail, and at least one loader for the weapon of your choice. On the chest, you'll want to rock resist mods that match the activity that you're in, and on the boots, I recommend recuperation, since it's likely that you'll be focusing brawler armor on Titan to give you the maximum 70 health on orb pickup. You'll also want a scavenger mod on your boots, as ammo is definitely a bit dodgy this DLC, and last but not least, on the class item, I went with double bomber and powerful attraction to boost grenade regen and collect nearby orbs of power when using our class ability. The icing on the cake is the artifact this season. It takes what this build does well and makes it even stronger. The main ones to note are Tightly Woven, which grants increased class ability and grenade stats while Woven Mail is active, Elemental Benevolence, which grants the user class ability energy when giving allies elemental buffs, aka Radiant from our charged melee kills with Facet of Dawn, Elemental Coalescence, which grants the user a chance to make elemental pickups that match their super, aka a Tangle for Strand, which pairs perfectly with Refresh Threads that grant ability energy to your least charged ability when picking up Tangles. So our melee is essentially feeding us massive ability regen and damage buffs while supplying our allies with Radiant at all times. And last but not least, we have Shield Crush, which grants our melee increased damage while Woven Mail is active for an additional 50% increase to our melee damage, which makes all the melee damage stacking we've discussed in today's video even crazier. This build has ad clear, survivability, crowd control, support, and regen all in one. It's easy to use and in my opinion has felt so much stronger than any other Titan build so far in Edge of Fate. Well guys, that's gonna do it for the video. I hope you enjoyed, and if you did, a like and subscription would be greatly appreciated. As always, the dim link to this build can be found in the description below, and if you have any other builds you'd like to see me showcase in the future, be sure to leave them down in the comments below. Anyways, that's it from me. Thank you all so much for watching, and I'll catch you next time. Peace!